Episode 4. This is a conversation with Rezaan. Rezaan has an awesome track record in terms of going from a very successful professional career and into his own fintech startup, having to pivot that startup, walk through a lot of bureaucratic nightmares because it is in the finance industry, and what that type of journey looks like. We go back to his school days and understand like what global moving around it did for him, how it unlocked his approach to life, and you will learn a lot from him in terms of grit and developing a high pain threshold for overcoming a huge amount of challenges. It was great for me to connect with him. He's a long-time friend, but also doing some really innovative things, and good learning for me. In this episode, I've developed a lot in my ability to ask better questions and preparation around the guest that I'm interviewing. So hang on for the episode and follow on the conversation. Yeah, welcome, dude. Thanks for coming to chat. This is my emergency makeshift studio. I had to put this together in a bit of a rush, but it's come together pretty nicely. So welcome. Happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
So we've been talking about a lot of stuff, and I think that you've had like a really crazy journey. You started studying in South Africa. You went to school in South Africa, then studied abroad, and now you're running a global fintech startup. But what was that journey like from South Africa, sort of going international? How did that come about? What was that about?
So interestingly enough, a story to start with is that representation really matters.
Yeah.
So growing up, it was weird. My hero, the person I idolized, wasn't necessarily a soccer player or a rugby player. When I was 14 years old, I saw that Kofi Annan
Okay.
was the head of the United Nations.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, how does this guy
Yeah.
from Africa, from Ghana, become the head of this international organization? Like, what did he do? Like, how did he get there?
Yeah.
How is he so powerful in the eyes of a
Yes.
sort of 14-year-old? And that really sparked my imagination. I was like, if he could do this, so could I.
Yes.
Like, what steps did he take? So I went and I researched. Where did he go to university? He went to Macalester in the US. So I was like, better go to the US. Like,
Okay, awesome.
This is what you have to do. Extracurricular activities.
Yes.
I went and did Model United Nations because
Uh-huh.
it was just like an insight into this great organization that was bringing in world leaders, cooperation, and sort
Yes.
of at the end of the 90s, the world was still flat.
Yes.
You could really do anything. Trade was booming. I think we've gone a little bit backwards now.
Yes.
Things are a little bit more isolationist. But at that stage, you could really do anything. You could live anywhere. You could purchase anything from anywhere. It was quite a cool time to be a kid and have a lot of imagination.
Yeah. So I think that we'll sort of go more into sort of the attributes of success and those things. But for me, I think that one thing people don't really understand is how difficult it is to number one, move to a sort of a new city, let alone move to multiple countries. Like, there's a huge amount of courage attached to that. And I think the second part of that is that maybe sort of like not commonplace for people in Europe or the US or the UK to understand, is that it's not actually that easy to travel when you're on a different passport, right? Like, it takes a lot of effort. And so Kofi Annan, like, how did he get there? But more than that is like, the path for people to sort of find their way to doing something, and what are the opportunities. Like, if you were sitting in South Africa and you had a South African passport, or you had limitations in terms of where you could travel and work, like, what would your starting point be to go overseas and start something?
Sure. I think the biggest lesson that I learned is that you can ask for help.
Yes.
A lot of people get stuck at that first step.
Yes.
Like, yes, you can have an idea.
Yes.
Great. Share it.
Yes.
An idea is not really worth anything if it's just internal and you're keeping it to yourself.
Yes.
take that first step. That's the bravery you were talking about. You have to be brave to even just take that internal thought and put it on the outside. What are people going to judge me?
Yes.
Are people going to think I'm crazy? What sort of feedback am I going to get? Am I going to be ridiculed by
Yes.
my friends and family that think that this is impossible?
Yes. Yes. Got you.
Take it. Take that first tiny step. And you never know who you'll bump into when you start creating those circles, when you start asking the right questions.
Yes.
That's when the sort of magic happens and you find opportunities. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
find scholarships, you find people that will sponsor your visas, you find people that will offer you great salaries.
Yes. Yeah, I think that that starting point is identifying who will help you. You know, is that saying, is that like, you know, the first piece is a good idea. I want to work overseas. I want to start a startup overseas. That's a great idea. The next piece is defining like the network that will provide the support to do that for you. And how do you find that network? And you have to start, you have to put yourself out there to some ridicule, a lot of no's, a lot of it can't be done, because that's the normal way that people see things. Like they see the resistance in things first. And so if your vision is to go somewhere, you have to see through that and say, okay, who are the best people to help me with that, and seek them out. And in terms of your sort of support and, you know, your drive, who were the first ones who really sort of helped you sort of level up?
Sure. So definitely my parents.
Okay.
Imagine apartheid South Africa, very sort of hostile environment. My dad got a Shell scholarship.
Okay.
So the big petroleum company said, "Hey, we understand your education hasn't been great because of the apartheid system of government. Let's put you in St Andrews in Grahamstown for a year,
Awesome.
and then go to UCT as uh, a chemical engineer."
Okay.
So my dad did really well, got that opportunity. My mom always says that she had better grades,
Yes.
but he got the opportunity.
Awesome.
But she also studied. The only opportunity available at that time was to be a teacher. So that's how she went to university, became a teacher. I still remember going to a high school after school and spending a lot of time while she was there. So I had lots of great role models and examples, and a lot of good opportunities growing up on the UCT campus
Okay.
in the sort of early 90s.
So you were telling me an interesting story about your mom's opportunity, and you know, she's working at Koeberg, South Africa's only like nuclear power plant, well, then only nuclear power plant, and now there's stuff potentially on the horizon for that. But you know, like what was that journey, and then you sort of your relocation? What was that like as a young kid?
Sure. So I at that stage I was standard six, which is grade eight, um, in the typical South African system. All boys, Model C school, SACS, which is an amazing school.
Yes.
Percy Montgomery's in Lisbon this week, so
Awesome. Yeah.
he's also an old boy. And I didn't want to go. I was like, there's a boarding school.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy. You guys go. I'll just stay here, super comfortable playing under 13 C rugby or whatever it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
having a great time. But again, parents doing really well, super supportive, said, look at this great opportunity. Why don't we go and see what it looks like? So my mom moved to Paris for a secondment, and I went to ISP, so the International School of Paris. And imagine the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Going from this super structured boys only school, a
Very
grade class
traditional,
with
like, yeah, very old school.
like
Yeah.
150 people in your grade,
Yes.
to a classroom full of 17 kids from 15 different countries.
Yeah. Great. Cultural shift of note, right?
Super crazy. The most funny thing for me was I didn't realize that people wore the same weekend clothes during the week. Because
Yeah, you have a school uniform, and then you have your weekend clothes, right? Like, yeah, that's great.
And then you'd see kids and you'd be like, you're wearing the same stuff. It's
Yeah.
just like even little things like that is.
Yeah. The weekend was your best clothes, and then like during the week was like your rubbish clothes, right? Like you was wear school uniform, and then after school you'd be just like hanging out. So it was like a complete
Yeah,
different
so
culture
that
shock.
was one of those little cultural shifts that you're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is different.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so do you think that doing that kind of ripped the band-aid off for you from being like super flexible on where you live and where you work?
Yes, and I also think it was like I was again just fortunate to be in that position even earlier than that. So
Yeah,
imagine my parents both 19 years old
yeah,
with a kid going to university.
yes,
I was immediately put into the creche at UCT, and I was probably the only kid there that had, and in my family and in my community that had black friends, white friends. It was just super diverse and super mixed for
yes,
South Africa at that time. So
yes,
again, I was fortunate, and yeah, I don't want to always place a lot of emphasis on I just had great opportunities.
yeah,
It's how do you frame those great opportunities?
yeah, yeah,
Because even in those opportunities come a lot of adversity.
yeah,
Friends saying, why are you so different? Why do you have black friends?
yeah.
Like
Yeah. There's things to overcome. I think, but that's the thing about opportunities. They're 1,000 a day. And but it's those who pursue them, right? Like, and there has to be an element of courage to pursue that opportunity.
yeah,
Going back to the thing about asking for help is that the first piece is that there's an element of fear. What if I get ridiculed? What if someone wants to steal my idea? What if it's just rubbish? And so there's also the fear of the work attached to that. Like, there's going to be some grind that I have to do here, and most people don't want to do the grind. Like there's a level where you've got to live uncomfortably to make serious change in your life. And so the first piece is, okay, can I go live overseas? Can I make new friends? Can I fit in culturally where something's completely different? And then after that, you overcome that fear. You say like, okay, what's the next thing? And there's there's going to be constant resistance to everything you want to do in life, even if the opportunity is handed to you on a
sure.
silver platter. And I think that you've gone past that. So yes, you had a lot of circumstantial stuff that generated the first momentum for you, but then at some point you have to stand up and say, okay, well, I choose to pursue that. I mean, I choose to go study in the US. And then you were in a super successful career, and you decided to sort of move over to the startup side of the world. Like, what was that thinking in terms of, I'm successful, I'm doing well, you're in the Ivory Coast, right? Like, I'm there. Transitioning from that mindset into startup mindset, like, what was that?
So again, just opportunity. We lived in Lake Como,
Okay.
and I worked for a Swiss company before moving to Lisbon. Danny, my wife, who you know, also worked at a Swiss lab, and the opportunities are very different in Switzerland, right?
Yes.
Right? Like Danny did really well in South Africa at Wits and published a lot of great scientific research.
Yes.
In Switzerland, same, not the same, a great lab as well, but is publishing in Nature. So
Okay.
the scale is always a little bit different.
Yes.
But Danny knew that she didn't want to pursue a career in science.
Yes.
And we also were looking to settle down, and we're saying, what matches more of our needs and our wants and our desires? And
Mhm.
we put together a list, and we said, Lisbon ticks all of the right boxes.
Yes.
Great community, startup ecosystem. I actually thought that I'd be on the other side of the startup ecosystem, so
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
on the investment side. So
Okay.
that was my background, and how do we identify early stage businesses, get them in build pipeline, and help get them in front of venture capitalists. So I thought that's what I'd do. And in Lisbon, while I was scoping out the ecosystem, one of the ways that I wanted to pitch to VCs
Yeah.
was to identify a list of 10 companies, 10 ideas that I thought were really good ideas that I
Yeah.
could take to a VC and say, hey, you should hire me because I'm by myself. I've developed this pipeline.
Yes.
This is what I can do. That's why you should hire me.
Yes.
I ended up falling really in love with one of the ideas.
Awesome. Okay. Okay.
And so that was, again, opportunity, circumstantial, but I'd put in the work
Yeah.
to find my way there. So one of the ideas, great partners, something that I was really passionate about, which was access to finance. And how do we make that more digital and more relevant in today's world? And ended up transitioning not into the funding side, but into the entrepreneurship side. And it wasn't necessarily the plan. I think I did an MBA, and a lot of people's careers were planned out.
Yes.
My career has been emergent.
Yes.
So it's been like, oh, what opportunity is in front of you? Is this exciting? Yes or no?
Okay.
Let's take a step into it. And then the sort of tree diagram spreads from there.
Okay.
And recently I saw a great post where it showed this diagram splitting off, and it shows a point now.
Yeah.
And an infinite new amount of opportunities.
Yeah.
I think people forget that. People very easily look at the decisions they made before.
Yes.
Instead of saying, what opportunity can I make, or what decision can I make today?
Yeah.
That will make a huge cascading difference. And I
Yeah.
think that's where we shouldn't get stuck.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is the opportunity.
And I think decision can be changed with action, right? Like, what action can I take? Interchange, sorry, is the right word. What action can I take that will lead to that? Like, the ideation is like the very easy part. Like, this is good opportunities, this is a good idea. And then the first action is to just do. And then,
not even that. So sorry, the first action isn't to do.
Yeah.
We break these decisions down into these massive things. Like, the first action is to talk about it.
Yeah. To bring it to sort of to life, and it creates something. And I think that where the failure point is, and the difficult step over, is the doing, right? Like, I find that idea, talking about, those things happen. They happen around the braai or the barbecue, as they call it here. It's very easy to start within your network, sort of percolating the idea, talking about the idea. But the idea often fails, where execution begins. And so that's kind of like the first fail point that people have to overcome. And doing is like, it's not that complicated when you start with the first step. And sometimes the first doing is like, okay, I'm going to plan this out, and these are 5 things that I need to achieve for this thing to start breathing, or 2 things or 1 thing. And you do that first thing. And often it's a very easy step. I'm going to make this phone call.
Sure.
This is the first thing I want to do, is make a phone call. Or the first thing I'm going to do is do some research. Or the first thing I'm going to do is this. It's like those are small incremental steps that lead to this myriad of decision tree branch outs that are going to happen now. So I think that's a thing that people can look at a decision tree like that. Is that the correct word? Decision tree. They can look at this, like, this evolution of these ideas, and get quite intimidated by it. But if you look at the first point, it is actually very small. And how has it been? Sort of, now you had this evolution. I'm going to be on the finance side of this. I'm going to help build these companies. I'm going to put them in front of VCs. And you're like, actually, I'm going to be on the front of this, pitching to VCs. How's that journey been for you?
Slower than expected. You immediately have all the great plans. You do the business plan, and it's going to shoot the lights out. That's not the reality. And I think if you talk to any entrepreneur that's starting out, they'll tell you that harsh reality. It's a new set of decisions that you have to make every single day. So that decision tree doesn't ever stop. It's about making the right or the wrong decision. That's the beauty of it, right? It's just a decision. And I think that's where a lot of failure comes in for people that are starting out. They're too scared to make a decision because they think it would be the wrong decision. That's not the point. The point is, make a decision.
Exactly.
And go from there. And I know it's not the typical way of very structured, very planned out. And I think that's again my personality.
Yeah.
I have the sort of explorer, pathfinder personality. I like to go out and look at that. And actually, having a coach, we talked about this recently. Having a coach allowed me to identify that personality trait.
Yes.
Right, like that's where outside help or an outside perspective is very interesting. I know if I look at a friend's business, I can always point holes.
Yeah.
Take that on yourself, right?
Exactly.
Somebody else might see things a lot differently than what your perspective is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so having a coach really helped me to understand, oh, what you're doing is that you love that decision tree,
Yes.
making the unknown choice.
Yes.
That's what drives me and what excites me. Um, but it often leads to not taking everybody along with you.
Yeah.
So how do you draw that back a little bit? Try to explain those decisions and your choices to your team, to your partners, to your family.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I've developed as well as
Okay.
a leader, as a person, is with that coach being like, this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's brought you success so far. But how do you use it
Yeah.
more in a beneficial way than just sort of going with the flow?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like for me, the coaching component is, if you go to gym and you want really good results, you get an expert in that to help you with that.
Yeah.
Someone who knows about nutrition, someone who knows about training, and particular to what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's the same thing about like an executive coach or life coach is saying, okay, you constantly make these decisions. Let's figure out what the framework behind that is so that you have the formula.
Yeah.
And once you understand the formula, you can apply it to more things. And so, I tend to be like an anxious overachiever. I'm always driven by a huge amount of anxiety. Chaos keeps the anxiety quiet. I have a tendency to be overloaded by that anxiety too. So like I can have the perfect storm where everything's going wrong and then I'm completely like smashed. And a coach has said, well, here's a rudder on the back of your ship. And this is how you're going to approach emotional, stressful decisions that you need to make. This is how you're going to approach challenging conversations in your life. This is how you're going to approach new opportunities. And then you build from there. So like once you understand those things, you actually build a bigger framework for yourself. So I think that coaching is such a key way to sort of find a route for yourself. So yeah, it's great to hear that you're doing that. I highly recommend definitely get a coach. But you've had some, when you talk about like it's taken longer than expected, also highlights the reality that startups face a lot of challenge. They face a lot of sort of fail points. What are like some major fail points that you've approached, and sort of what was your process to sort of overcoming those fail points?
Sure. So I guess the biggest first fail point was realizing that what I wanted wasn't enough.
Okay.
So
What do you mean?
so that encapsulates product market fit.
Yes. Okay.
So I could have thought the idea was amazing. I could have thought the technology and the tech stack that we built was amazing. And I was very confident in what we had to offer.
Yes.
When you take that to market and the market says, meh,
Yeah. That's not what you are, right? Like that's not what we find appealing about you, right?
yeah, they might see something different that they're like a little piece in the corner. Being able to, again, on that decision tree, make a pivot, change from I don't know everything, I don't know the right solution or the right answer.
Yes.
Oh, this is something that's attractive. Let's look at this further.
Yes.
So I think that is a very key piece of the puzzle. A lot of people can go with the idea, be wedded to an idea,
Yeah.
and as soon as that idea doesn't fit, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's all over. It's the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, get the feedback. As I said before, get the feedback. What are people seeing out there? What do they like or dislike?
Yeah.
And make a decision, make a change.
Yeah. I mean, that is, it's like an idea is a living thing.
Yeah.
And you don't walk around to living things telling them what they are, right? Like you kind of look at the living thing and you accept what it giving you, and then you say, okay, well, in order for you to be the best version of that living thing, this is some things that I'd like to put into your system, right? Like it's like parenting, right? Like I think that it's like, hey, okay, I've got some feedback here that you disagree about what you are, and to deny that would actually be detrimental to the idea. And so, yeah, you're going to, once the idea becomes something tangible, people are going to have ideas about it. They're going to interact with it in a certain way, and you're going to get constant feedback on that. And I've seen that a lot, is where people are so shoehorned into one specific way of thinking about, this is the vision, and because I own a startup, I have to maintain this vision, and therefore and there's like, sort of $10 million later, okay, that didn't work. And then there's like the 5,000 euro sort of thing to build on at the back, or $5,000 thing to build on that was much cheaper, that suddenly emerges into what it actually really is. And I think that that's it. We've actually, with our startup, been through something very similar. It's like, we've been in the space for a long time. We've been in the market for a long time. We know our users. We know our sort of our customers very well, and we were just sort of hitting this like plateau, and then we said, okay, but what is the thing that people really want out of our business that we have, that we're not putting forward, we're not pursuing? And we called it our plan B in the business. Like, this is our plan B. If this doesn't work, this is our plan B. And actually, plan B is now plan A. Like that became the thing, and so that's a challenge. And one of the big challenges that you have, especially in fintech, is you have to overcome is bureaucracy. So, like, what are some major pivots that you've had to make around bureaucracy, and how have you done that?
Sure. So we're in the fintech business, and at Finvex, we focus on working capital. We saw that this was a huge need for not only startups, but for small and medium-sized businesses across the range of businesses. We saw that businesses do very well as cash businesses.
Yeah.
Start out, understand their product, understand their clients, and can transact personally and get paid immediately and go on to the next sale.
Yes.
So that's the sort of model of the lemonade store that everybody pitches to you, as you start a business as a lemonade store.
Yes.
But it doesn't tell the whole story of a business. A business is about working capital.
Yes.
We never see behind the lemonade stand.
Yeah.
Where did those lemons come from? What was the labor to put in? And how did you have enough cash to put that all up to sell?
Yes.
So we always talk about selling as the starting point in a business, and that's what we realized wasn't the starting point. And so what we do is we really help businesses on that working capital journey. When they start to scale, they start to get larger clients, and those clients start to pay in 30, 60, 90 days.
Yeah.
But as a small business, you have to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
And so we go in and we finance that period. So the work's been done, service has been delivered. Let's pay you immediately so that you can sustain yourself for that time. We can survive the 90 days because we pull in funders.
Okay.
So our business model is a platform. We have, on one side, the businesses that are creating this work and these credit rights and invoices. We have us as the platform, and on the other side, we have funders. Our first struggle was that we'd built a technology platform to automate the collection of data, the verification and confirmation that this data was valid, so that the funder would be ready to make this instant payment.
Yeah. Because you have to pre-vet that a lot, right? Like, it's short-term unsecured lending, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, it's at the back.
It's at the back, right?
Yeah.
So you want some strong vetting on your customer before you give them cash.
Yeah. So we'd taken this whole solution to the banks. And so our first bureaucratic point was going to a big bank and them saying, but we do this already.
Yeah.
And that's true. Lots of banks do invoice confirming, and it is a good model in the banks. But we saw a market opportunity to offer it to SME clients that the banks weren't reaching.
Yes.
And what we found was the banks were then started to say, oh, we can't use cloud computing. Core banking integration, hey, the APIs you built won't work for us. And so it was very difficult for us to understand what our product did. Even though we're making their lives easier, even though we're bringing customers to them to
Yes.
automate this financing system, they then started to add on all this complexity.
Yes.
And what we had to do at that stage was say, how do we get the financing without using a bank?
Yeah.
And so this was a big pivot for us, and it's led us down the road of setting up our own financing vehicle. And we set that up in Luxembourg at the beginning of this year.
Okay.
And that's really helped us to now give a full solution.
Yes.
So at the beginning, we wanted to be a purely tech, highly scalable model. We don't need to worry about any of the other things.
Yeah.
But that's not what the market wanted.
Yeah.
We
Well,
wanted
and
to.
in order to provide scale, you actually have to own more of the sort of the structure of it, right? Like you can't rely on. And I think, you know, when I deal with banks, and I think that that's a big area of disruption. So education's a big one, banking's a big one. They're all like sort of really ripe for disruption because their systems and models have stayed the same for the longest amount of time. And you know, we also, like, I launched sort of a mobile POS sort of fintech, and we would go into banks and we'd sit down with them and say, okay, well, we really love what this is bringing. We love what it takes to the market. We want to be a part of that story. But here are our limitations. We have legacy infrastructure, hardware infrastructure. So it's not that flexible. We've signed long-term contracts with our partners. So anything that we do has to go through them. So you're going to have to work with this supplier to make this thing work. And they were like, well, this is not that easy to do because we're still, you know, running on like mainframe structures, and we don't have that type of flexibility. And the security on the bank regulations, like they're much more limited in terms of regulation from, you know, sort of the central banks. So they weren't actually able to, as much as the intent was there, the capability just wasn't matching what they wanted to do. So disruption means that often you have to sort of bypass these until they can catch up, and then they sort of catch up later, either purchase what you've built, or they sort of start building something that'll take them sort of 4 or 5 years later to come out with.
And banks are the incumbents. We really saw a role to partner with them.
Yeah.
That's what we really wanted to do. They have great customers. They have the capital already in-house. So we did want to work with banks.
Yeah.
It was just that fit.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
even though we thought our model was great and it was a good addition to a bank,
Yeah.
the feedback from the banks were like, oh, not right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, like, so now you've partnered, you have international founders, some sitting in Brazil, you're sitting here, you've got teams in South Africa. So it's pretty global. Sort of, how do you sort of manage your life around this international team?
Sure. So actually, this was one of the upsides of COVID for us when everything went remote. It allowed us to solidify that structure.
Yes.
It became more acceptable to have remote teams.
Okay.
And to work because we're a cloud native company.
Okay.
So how can we say we are a cloud-based company? We can operate, we can scale at any time and any size. And then say, oh, but we can't scale because we have an office that's in Lisbon and it's limited. It limits our sales.
Yes.
Like
Yeah. So now it's like completely
the two ideas were against each other. So if we want to live in a cloud native, innovative business, that means incorporating all these different things.
Yeah, I think that was a sort of a side effect of COVID, was like major mindset shift across a lot of things, like time in office, sort of where are we effective, how productive can people be if they're left at home. You know, a lot has sort of changed in terms of that, and so like I find a good balance between in office and remote. I think that human connection is like a really sort of important thing. Why a lot of people still choose to go into a co-working space, just to make some sort of daily human connection. It makes us happier. Yeah, and just also keeps you away from the fridge, which is a major thing. Like what's been like a real negative for you about the startups that you've really had to overcome?
A real negative. So because I'm based in Lisbon and really leading this European expansion, I am a little bit isolated. So as you said, a co-working space does help with that, getting in front of people. But it's about overcoming that question of, entering a new market,
Mm-hmm.
not having a comfortable existing network.
Mm-hmm.
How do you start to build that network? How do you start to build credibility in the marketplace? How do you start to show a new offering
Yes.
in the market that might not be accepted?
Yes, yeah, that, and I mean personally, like for me, um, in the professional sense, like often your structure's largely formed. You kind of know the processes to follow, and then moving into the startup space, it was like, okay, we have to build these things ourselves, and it personally led me to a lot of insecurity, like who's validating me? How do I know if I'm doing a good job? Like a lot of people depending on me. So how am I going to, sort of take on the role of providing for them? So it built a huge amount of insecurity that I had to sort of figure out a way over it. Like, is there any sort of like characteristic or attribute that's developed for you?
So I think maybe resilience.
Mm-hmm.
We talked earlier about grit, and things go wrong.
Yeah.
Things go wrong, and they don't go the way that you expect them to go. What are you gonna do
Yeah.
the morning after?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you pack your bags and throw it all in, throw the towel in, or do you have a bit of resilience built in,
Yeah.
and something that you can rely on yourself? But not only rely on yourself, rely on your support network to give you that space to be
Yeah.
resilient. I think a lot of people maybe haven't developed or cultivated that support network.
Yes.
We talk about entrepreneurship as being very lonely,
Yes.
but it's almost the opposite.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that depends on you, right? Like it's lonely if you want it to be lonely, or it's not. And I think that it depends how you approach it. I think we were, speaking about that, is that startups have been evangelized because it makes the success of them sweeter. So when the lead up story to success was a tougher road that someone walked, then the success is much bigger. So it's not just about how much money they sort of made at the IPO. It's also been like, well, they worked 16-hour days every single day of the week, and they talk about these things, but that's not actually the truth of the matter. Is that the people leading startups actually need to be very balanced. They need to bring a lot of structure to themselves so that they can recuperate from the things that go wrong. They have to know how to unplug and say, okay, today's an unplug day. I'm definitely going to take some time out, so that when the pressure mounts, when things need to be sort of pivoted really quickly, when there's tough decisions to make, I'm fully available to do that. I'm rested, I'm strong, I'm healthy. I think that's the truth of startups. There's a lot of like personal management that has to happen. There's a lot of personal growth that has to happen. And I was watching the documentary with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It says like he didn't do it by himself. He relied on a lot of people, and that's the truth of it, is that you have like-minded people in the office that you can go and confide in. When the cash flow is bad, you sit down and you cry together, like, how are we going to do this thing? And and then you have your sort of family support that says, okay, you can be yourself here, you can sort of vent these things. And so there's lots of plug-in points that you have to find and work on, so that you can be the best version of yourself.
yeah, and I think that comes with the whole ecosystem maturing.
Yes.
I think we idealized that sort of Silicon Valley model, young college dropout founder, and that's not necessarily the reality. I
Yes.
think there's a lot of space for older founders in industries that need to be disrupted.
Yes.
Who's the best person to disrupt an industry? It's probably somebody that's worked in it for 20 years, can see an opportunity or a gap that maybe others can't see. And so I really like the idea of older founders, and founders that you said have that right priority. They have the good work-life balance.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it. Is like, we used to say this quite a lot, but like work-life integration, I think these things go hand in hand. Is that, when you're running a business, that you can't disconnect, you can't unplug from it. So you have to integrate it into your life and make sure that you're still getting the benefit of other aspects of your life. Your family is important, relationships are important. All these things are like really good. And I think again, like evangelizing the college dropout is like anti-establishment, and he went against the grain, and he went and he did this stuff. And those things they're cool stories, but at the end of the day, that's actually a very few of them that like go that way. And there's and even as those startups evolve, they rely more and more on the established experienced folks to take it and scale it up to the next level. So, in the early stages, you kind of want the generalists. They're in everything. They don't mind working till 3 a.m. They're partying together. Like, all those things are great because they generate the energy and the momentum the startup needs. But eventually they mature. And then they need people in and say, okay, it's still a startup. We're still figuring stuff out. But now here's some experience and some knowledge that I can bring to the table that will help us answer some of these tougher questions. And so that's the thing, is that, like, if you choose the startup route, you need a high pain threshold. That's the truth of it. It is daily, but you develop that high pain threshold by knowing when to step away from the pain, when to figure out this is pain not worth pursuing. There's a less painful road to walk, and I think that those are the things that we have to do. And in terms of your sort of, what is the daily process or structure that you follow that generates the most productivity for you?
So yeah, I think you're right. It's how do you start your day? It's not start your day and immediately on your phone, replying to emails in the dark. Get up, go and spend a few minutes exercising, have a good breakfast, and really prepare yourself for the day. I like to have, it's not very fancy, but a Google Sheets with a checklist. And when I set those priorities in a day, it's super helpful because I can always go back to the list. When I don't have that, I have a million things to do and then accomplish nothing.
Exactly, like the busiest day you've ever had, and then you sit at the end of the day, like you're chatting to your wife. You're like, "What did I do today?" It's like, I just know I was really busy. So the sort of there is like a dopamine rush that you get from ticking something off of a checklist. So that's like a major one. I also find, like, if you get up early and you sort of you start your routine, you get your cup of coffee, and your mind starts working on the things that you're most often thinking about, and then you put that to paper, it eliminates a lot of noise. And so your minds are excellent at creating a lot of noise because they don't think in a linear fashion. So they go da, 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 idea, problem, and they manifest a lot of stuff that isn't actually true. And then you're like, I have so much to do today. And then you write it down, it's like, oh, actually, I only have 3 things I need to do. And if I take away these 3 things, I don't have the rest of this noise completely disappears. And in terms of your sort of your path to this, is there anything that you would like really change, in terms of getting here?
No, I think again, I think I'm super fortunate to have the freedom to make a lot of decisions. I understand that that's not for everybody, and I understand that that is my personality type. So it's what's allowed me to be successful, and I think that speaks a lot to authenticity. So if you are super structured, super scientific, and that's the way that you are going to be most comfortable and get the most success, follow that. Mine's just one example where I thrive in that. What's the next decision? How is this going to impact the future? Like, I don't know, but that's that's what I'm going to do. That's my way of progressing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but that is it. Is that what's become quite a natural state for you is actually the best development state. If you really want to develop in anything, you have to expose yourself to a level of discomfort in it. Exercise, sort of studying, whatever it is, whatever development you seek in your life on the path to success needs an element of discomfort, and how you're willing to expose yourself to that comfort. So all the trend is cold showers, all the trend is like eating right. Like, these things bring a level of discomfort. Like, there's a constant battle with you to say, like, well, do I really want to make that decision? That's not going to be as nice for me as this decision. But if you consistently expose yourself to sort of micro doses of discomfort, what it yields for you is really significant in terms of where you will end up in your life. And what is the number one sort of personal project that you're working on at the moment?
So I was very excited to recently get into a PhD program in finance. So in Lisbon, um, I was really shocked when I got into fintech and working on it every day. You develop a very intimate knowledge of the sector and become almost a quasi expert in the field.
Yeah.
What I realized in terms of finance is how little comprehension we have. One example that comes up repeatedly is that for SMEs, we see that there aren't very many financial products specifically built for SMEs.
Okay.
A lot of the products out there in the marketplace are personal products, like a personal credit card that's slapped on to a fancy business card.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't serve SMEs in the right way.
Yeah.
And so the PhD program is allowing me to explore all these new trends, what's going to happen in the future, what can we do to adapt existing models,
Yes.
but put them in context for a smaller marketplace. And so I'm super excited about the opportunity to get exposed to that and to put our business through that rigorous journey as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's going to be a good few years.
It's just interesting to me that like SMEs are so underserved when they actually tend to be the norm, not the outlier, right? Like SMEs used to be like kind of like I have a small business, you know, like the entrepreneurs weren't as common, right? But now a lot of people are like going that route. They're saying like, actually, you know, I want to own my own business. I want to do these things, and so like that you don't have to look very far to find people running their own businesses. Whereas like most people you know in times before, it's like I need to get a good job in a big institution with a big brand, and like a lot of banking and sort of institutions serve that model.
Yeah.
But the new model is actually, hey, I'm a small business, cash flow is a problem. You know, how do I solve these things? How do I sort of get my products to the large institutions without going bankrupt along the way? You know, it's like one part is picking up the phone and selling a product, the other part is producing it and getting it there, and the last part is getting payment for it, right? Like these are challenges that we go through sort of every single day. And so you know, sort of changing sort of financial models around that to serve the larger audience now just makes sense. It's not the biggest in volume, but it is the larger in terms of sort of quantity. So yeah, it's a challenging one, but I think it's one that's necessary. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that's it from us today, and it was really good to chat to you, and thanks for sharing your knowledge and your journey with us. It's been good.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Cheers.